The psychology trick that turns pain into discipline. We all experience pain: emotional, physical, psychological, spiritual. But have you ever wondered why some people collapse under pain while others transform it into unstoppable discipline? Why two people can experience the same hardship, but one becomes weaker and the other becomes stronger? And more importantly, have you asked yourself why you sometimes take your suffering and turn it into motivation and other times let it crush you? There's a hidden psychological trick in all of this, one so powerful that understanding it can change your entire relationship with discipline forever. And that is the central truth of this journey. Pain itself doesn't create discipline, your interpretation of pain does. Let me ask you a question that's deeper than it seems. What do you believe pain means? Most people assume pain is a signal to stop, to run, to escape. But what if pain is actually a signal to understand, to transform, to build? What if the discomfort you feel is not punishment but information pointing toward a version of you that you haven't grown into yet? Pain, by its nature, demands attention. It forces awareness. It breaks your autopilot. And inside that interruption lies your opportunity. Every time your emotional world trembles, you are given a doorway into becoming someone sharper, stronger, clearer, more disciplined than before.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
Think about the last time you felt deep emotional pain, maybe heartbreak, failure, rejection, disappointment. In that moment, did you collapse inward and let the pain define you? Or did you rise and let it push you toward something? What determined the difference wasn't the event, it was the meaning you assigned to it. The human mind is wired to avoid discomfort, yet paradoxically, it is also wired to grow from it. That tension is where this psychological trick begins. And it begins with something uncomfortable but profound. The reason pain can become discipline is because pain forces you to confront the gap between the life you want. When you feel the sting of regret, it's because your actions didn't match your potential. When you feel heartbreak, it's because your expectations didn't match reality. When you feel humiliation, it's because your self-image didn't match the outcome. Pain reveals the distance, and discipline is the act of closing it. Now imagine this. What if every time you feel pain, instead of collapsing inward, you saw it as proof that something must change? What if the discomfort was a compass pointing to the exact place in your life requiring evolution? What if the pain itself was the teacher you've been ignoring? Let's go deeper. Think about animals in nature. They don't spend energy feeling bad about pain, they respond to it. They adapt. They grow. They become sharper. Pain becomes part of their survival intelligence. But humans complicate pain with stories. We tell ourselves this shouldn't be happening. I'm not strong enough. This means I'm a failure. This means life is unfair. These stories amplify pain into suffering. But here's the psychological trick. If you change the story, you change the meaning. If you change the meaning, you change the impact. And when the impact changes, discipline emerges naturally, not forcefully. Because discipline is nothing more than repeated action rooted in meaningful interpretation. When pain has meaning, discipline becomes inevitable. When pain feels meaningless, discipline becomes impossible. Let me give you an example. Imagine a person who experiences a devastating breakup. One interpretation is, I wasn't enough. I'm unlovable. I'll never find someone again. This interpretation destroys discipline. It leads to paralysis, self-hatred, avoidance, collapse. Another interpretation is, I attracted someone aligned with my wounds. Now life is showing me the parts of myself I must strengthen before I step into the relationship I truly deserve. That interpretation builds discipline. Suddenly, self-care becomes non-negotiable. Personal growth becomes urgent. Healing becomes structured. Pain becomes fuel. Same event, different stories, different life trajectories. What about physical pain? Think of people who train for marathons, climb mountains, build extraordinary physiques. The pain they experience is not different from yours, but their interpretation is. They interpret pain as progress, as adaptation, as transformation. So discipline becomes a natural response, not a forced one. Now, let me ask you something deeper. What is your default story when you feel pain? Do you interpret discomfort as an attack or as an invitation? Do you interpret hardship as proof that you're weak or as proof that you're being called to become stronger? Do you interpret disappointment as a punishment, or as redirection, your answers reveal your relationship with discipline. Because the hidden psychological trick is this: if you can reinterpret pain as purposeful, you will automatically become disciplined. You won't have to force it, negotiate with yourself, or rely on willpower. You will act because the pain showed you why you must. This is the transformation most people never discover. They think discipline is about scheduling, habits, motivation, or routines. But discipline is about emotion specifically, the meaning behind pain. If your pain has no meaning, discipline dies. If your pain becomes meaningful, discipline ignites. So I want to leave you with a question before we move to the next part, a question that might shift your entire understanding of why you feel pain in the first place. What if your pain is not here to break you, but to break the version of you that could never lead you to the life you desire? The neuroscience of turning emotional pain into power. When we talk about transforming pain into discipline, it's easy to imagine this as a purely philosophical shift, a change in mindset, a reframing of meaning. But the truth is deeper and far more fascinating. Your brain is biologically wired to turn pain into either paralysis or transformation. And the direction it chooses depends entirely on what you do in the first few minutes after the pain strikes. That early moment, the raw moment, the moment when the emotion hits with full force, that is the crossroads between becoming weaker and becoming unstoppable. Inside your brain, two primary systems fight for control in moments of pain: the threat system and the meaning system. The threat system sees pain as danger. It triggers fight, flight, or freeze. Your heart accelerates, your thoughts spiral, your body tenses. This is the part of you that wants to run, hide, break down, numb out, or collapse. But the meaning system does something radically different. It interprets pain as information, something to analyze, understand, and integrate. The meaning system shifts you from emotional reaction to intentional response. And the difference between these two systems determines whether you fall into despair or rise into discipline. Now here's the psychological trick most people never learn. You can train your brain to shift from the threat system into the meaning system faster than you think. And when you master that shift, discipline becomes instinctive. You move from "why is this happening to me?" to "what is this trying to teach me?" From "this hurts, I want to escape," to "this hurts, so I must pay attention." The pain becomes a signal instead of a sentence. Think of emotional pain as a fire alarm in your mind. Most people panic when they hear the alarm. They run in circles, they collapse. They look for someone else to put out the fire. But a trained mind hears the alarm and immediately searches for the source. Where is the fire? What caused it? What can I learn from it? What must I change because of it? That difference, panic versus fear. Investigation, is the difference between stagnation and growth. Let's talk neuroscience for a moment. When you face emotional pain, your amygdala fires first. This part of your brain is ancient. It reacts based on survival. It does not care about discipline. It does not care about growth. It does not care about your future. It cares only about protecting the version of you that exists right now. But the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logic, strategy, long-term thinking, and self-control, activates a few seconds later. And here's the breakthrough. If you can delay your reaction just slightly, even 5 to 10 seconds, you give the prefrontal cortex time to take over. And once it takes over, your brain shifts from panic to perspective. Pain becomes something you can shape. Why does this matter for discipline? Because discipline is not a personality trait. It is an emotional management system. Discipline is the ability to feel discomfort and choose action instead of avoidance. And when your prefrontal cortex is in charge, you choose action far more easily. I want you to imagine a moment of emotional pain, failure, embarrassment, heartbreak. Now imagine two internal reactions, one where you collapse and one where you rise. The collapse is instinctive. It's the threat system. It happens automatically. But the rise is trained. It's intentional. It's built through repetition. It's built through understanding that the first emotion is not the final outcome. And here is where the psychological trick becomes powerful. If you can link pain to purpose, your brain will begin to crave discipline instead of avoiding it. Think about physical exercise. The pain you experience while training is the same pain your body perceives as danger in other situations. But because you've linked that pain to growth, your brain does not interpret it as a threat. Instead, it interprets it as progress. You have literally rewired your threat system into a meaning system. So what would happen if you did the same with emotional pain? What if heartbreak meant I must upgrade my self-worth? What if failure meant I must refine my strategy? What if embarrassment meant I must improve my abilities? What if disappointment meant I must strengthen my resilience? Your brain is waiting for you to assign meaning. If you assign the right meaning, discipline becomes automatic. But let me ask you a question that cuts to the core of your identity. When pain strikes, do you want to escape or do you want to evolve? Your answer to that question determines your destiny. In the next part, we will explore the deeper philosophical layer, how pain shapes identity and why embracing it unlocks the discipline most people never reach. How pain reshapes identity and builds unbreakable discipline. If you look back on your life, you'll notice something profound. Every version of you that ever grew, transformed, or matured was born directly out of pain. Not comfort, not ease, not smooth seasons. Pain is the sculptor of identity. It is the only force powerful enough to break apart the version of you that cannot carry the life you want and reveal the version of you that can. But most people never benefit from this transformation because they resist the very catalyst that would shape them. They treat pain like an intruder instead of a messenger, like punishment instead of instruction. And because of that, they miss the psychological doorway that only pain can open. Here is the truth most people never realize until it's too late. Your identity is not who you are, it's who you've learned to be in response to your pain. If you were abandoned, maybe you learned to distrust. If you were ignored, maybe you learned to overperform. If you were criticized, maybe you learned to hide. If you were hurt, maybe you learned to harden. These adaptations become your personality, but they are not your essence, they are your protection strategies. And discipline becomes difficult when your identity is built around avoiding pain. Because avoiding pain means avoiding growth, means avoiding responsibility. When pain appears, the old identity will always try to keep you small. So let me ask you something deeply uncomfortable. Do you want to maintain the identity built from your past pain, or become the identity that your future requires? Because those two selves are rarely the same, and the bridge between them is discipline. But how does pain turn into discipline? It happens the moment you stop seeing pain as something happening to you and start seeing it as something happening for you. Most people think their pain is random or unjust, but pain always has intention. It always reveals a weakness in your emotional architecture. It always reveals what you've been avoiding. It always reveals where you are unprepared. Pain is the purest form of feedback you will ever receive in your life. And discipline is the response to that feedback. Think about identity like a container. Your current identity is only capable of holding a certain level of responsibility, effort, power, and success. When life forces more onto you than your identity can hold, you feel pain. That pain is not punishment, it is expansion pressure. It is life saying you cannot enter your next chapter with your current identity. Discipline becomes the tool that allows you to stretch, upgrade, and expand the container. The more pain you learn from, the more discipline you gain. The more discipline you gain, the more identity you build. The more identity you build, the more life you can hold. This is why people who have faced extreme hardships often become the most disciplined. They don't choose discipline, they become discipline. Their pain carved away the parts of themselves that were weak, fearful, or unfocused. Their suffering forced a confrontation with their inner world. They discovered that comfort was too expensive a price to pay for staying small, because staying small only created more pain. So they changed, they sharpened, they became responsible for their evolution. Pain became the furnace, discipline became the blade. Here's the fascinating philosophical twist. Discipline isn't actually about self-control, it's about self-respect. When pain reveals a weakness in your life and you choose not to fix it, you tell yourself subconsciously, I am not worth the effort. But when you confront your weaknesses and choose discipline, you tell yourself, I am worth becoming stronger. That subtle shift changes everything. Because when discipline comes from self-respect, it no longer feels like a burden, it feels like a duty to the version of you you're becoming. Let me ask you one of the most important questions of your life. What if the pain you keep trying to avoid is the exact pain that would unlock the version of yourself you've always wanted to become? There is a reason discipline feels impossible for many people. They're trying to change their habits without changing the identity that created the habits. They want to act like a disciplined person without becoming one. But pain forces identity change. It forces you to see who you've been, who you are, and who you must become. Once identity shifts, discipline no longer needs motivation, it becomes instinctive. So here is the real psychological trick. The moment you stop asking, "How do I avoid this pain?" and start asking, "How do I become someone who grows from this pain?" Discipline becomes unavoidable. It becomes the natural outcome of your evolution. You stop forcing discipline and start embodying it. In the final part, we will explore how to consciously use this psychological trick, how to turn every form of pain into sustainable, lifelong discipline that reshapes your future. Mastering the psychological trick, how to turn every pain into lifelong discipline. There comes a turning point in every person's life when pain stops being something that happens to them and becomes something they know how to use. It's subtle at first. You begin noticing that the moments you once tried to escape embarrassment, rejection, failure, disappointment, regret aren't destroying you anymore. Instead, they're directing you. You feel a shift in your internal world. Pain becomes data. Pain becomes clarity. Pain becomes purpose. And when pain becomes purpose, discipline becomes effortless. Because discipline is simply the repeated act of moving toward the person your pain has revealed you must become. But how do we reach this point consciously? How do we take this powerful psychological trick and use it in daily life, not just during dramatic moments? It begins with understanding that pain is information, not identity. Most people fuse the two. They feel emotional pain, rejection, failure, insecurity, and immediately conclude, "This means something about me," but it doesn't. Pain does not describe your worth, it describes your direction. Pain doesn't tell you who you are, it tells you where you must grow. And when you stop personalizing it, discipline arises naturally. Let's break down how this works on a practical level. When you feel emotional pain, the worst thing you can do is react immediately. Most people feel discomfort and rush to escape it through distraction, denial, avoidance, or emotional collapse. But if you give yourself even a moment of pause, a tiny gap of awareness, you shift into the meaning system of the brain instead of the threat system. In that moment, ask yourself one simple question: what is this pain trying to teach me? This question activates a completely different neurological circuit. Instead of shutting down, your brain begins searching for patterns, insights, solutions. Pain becomes a teacher, and discipline becomes the natural response to the lesson. Let's say you failed at something important. The pain that hits your chest or stomach is real, but it's not proof you're incapable. It's proof your skills need refinement. Discipline then becomes the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Or, imagine you face heartbreak. The pain is real, but it's not evidence that you're unlovable. It's evidence that something in your boundaries, your choices, or your self-worth needs strengthening. Discipline becomes the process of rebuilding your inner foundation. Or imagine you experience humiliation. The pain is real, but it's not evidence you should hide. It's evidence that you must become more resilient, more skilled, more grounded. Discipline becomes the path to reclaiming your confidence. In every scenario of pain, discipline emerges when you interpret the pain as an assignment rather than a punishment. And something extraordinary happens when you begin living this way. You stop fearing pain. You stop resisting discomfort. You start moving through life with a calm, grounded certainty. Because you know that even if things go wrong, even if everything collapses, you have the tools to rise again. Pain stops being the enemy. Pain becomes your sharpening stone. This is one of the greatest secrets of human development. Disciplined people aren't born disciplined, they are born wounded. But instead of letting their wounds define them, they let their wounds refine them. Pain made them pay attention. Pain made them responsible. Pain made them honest with themselves. Pain made them courageous. Pain made them disciplined. Every great creator, athlete, thinker, leader, or visionary shares this trait. They transformed pain into structure, into meaning, into standards, into action. What most people fear, they alchemized. But ask yourself, why not you? Why do you believe pain crushes you but strengthens others? Why do you assume discipline is something you lack rather than something you haven't activated yet? Why do you think your suffering is a sign to quit when it could be the sign that you're finally on the edge of becoming someone extraordinary? These questions matter because they cut to the truth. Discipline is not built from comfort, it is built from discomfort. It emerges from the decision to stop running from yourself. And it becomes unbreakable the moment you realize that every form of pain, physical, emotional, social, psychological, contains within it a blueprint for your evolution. So here is the final life-changing realization. Pain is not the opposite of discipline. Pain is the birthplace of discipline. And if you can learn to interpret every discomfort as a message instead of a threat, every setback as an assignment instead of a failure, every heartbreak as a transformation instead of a lost discipline, will no longer be something you struggle to create. It will be something you embody. Let me leave you with one question, one that has the power to redefine the rest of your life if you answer it honestly. What would happen if you stopped treating pain as a signal to stop, and instead treated it as the signal that it's time to become the version of yourself you've always known you were capable of being?